All right, welcome in. I'm Brian Edwards, MajorWager.com, coming to you Monday afternoon. We've got two games on tap in the NBA, and we'll get to those in a minute. But the main theme of this video is the Celtics and how I like them again in game two tomorrow night. As we said in the video last week, big fan of them at 20-1 odds. Well, that was last week at 20-1 odds and plus 550 to win the East that we discussed a couple NBA videos ago. And we'll go over the updated future odds here in a moment. But I want to talk about game one and as it pertains to game two tomorrow night back in Milwaukee. So 112.90 game one win Sunday afternoon in the series opener for Boston, which clearly looked to be the superior team. As I discussed last week, the tumultuous regular season is a thing of the past. It's new life. It's the postseason. Whatever happened in the regular season is irrelevant now. Al Horford, absolutely dominant last night. And I think we saw that with particularly Horford, but also Marcus Morris. Boston can throw two guys at Giannis who not only have the size, but also the muscle to not just compete, but to be successful defending Giannis, who was 3 of 14 from the field to start. Now, he ended up going 7 of 21, but he got a couple of garbage buckets. I remember one in particular late third quarter when Horford was not in the game. And pretty much in the half court, Giannis wasn't getting anything done. And that's a credit to Brad Stevens, mainly Al Horford, but also to Marcus Morris and just a team defensive effort. So Horford ends up with 20 points, 11 boards, 3 assists without a turnover. I don't know why he had 3 blocks. In the third quarter, that they were showing he had 5 blocks on the graphic on ABC. I guess the official scorekeeping did not give him blocks based off NBA.com. But anywho, Horford was sensational. Kyrie was outstanding. Gordon Hayward was outstanding off the bench. 13 points, 5 of 8 from the field, 5 assists from Hayward, 4 rebounds. Jaylen Brown was outstanding, 8 of 14 from the field, 19 points, 4 boards. Marcus Morris had an outstanding floor game, 4 of 6 from the field, 7 boards, 9 points. And really, the Bucks got nothing out of Brook Lopez or Eric Bledsoe. Both went 1 of 5 from the field. Sterling Brown got injured. He's questionable now for game 2 with a back injury, but also note that Aaron Baines is questionable with an ankle for the Celtics. Most books listing Milwaukee at -7.5. To hell with the zigzag theory. If you're familiar or not familiar with the zigzag theory, it is basically fading the result of game 1 in a playoff series in game 2, going with the opposite result of what happened the first time. Zigzag theory was very popular, 5 or 10 years ago. It had an outstanding percentage, but recently not so much. In fact, I heard on VSiN last week, it was either Matt Humans or Aaron Renning, who's very sharp at NBA, saying that it was at less than 50%. Zigzag theory for game 2 was at less than 50% in the last 3 or 4 years. So to hell with zigzag theory. I'm going with Boston again, plus 7.5. And that is the main point I want to make on today's video. But we'll also discuss tonight 2 games and Golden State Houston game 2 tomorrow. But like the Celtics tomorrow, I think I like the under again as well. Now it has gone from 223.5 down to 220. But this is playoff basketball now. Teams are not scoring as prolifically as the regular season. But again, the total down 223.5 points. But I still lean under. Moneyline Boston plus 265. I think you get a taste of that too. But to be clear, money management wise, more units certainly on Boston plus the 7.5. We'll also let me update the series price real quick. You could have got Boston around plus 230-ish on the series price. The updated series price at sportsbook.ag is Bucks minus 115, Celtics minus 105. For the Raptors, who won game one with Kawhi Leonard, dominant performance, 45 points and 11 boards, and they win 108-95. That game went under, but only because of a 30-point combined fourth quarter. It was tracking to an over, and that total for tonight's game two goes from 223 to 220. Toronto is minus 6.5. And again, the updated series price, Toronto minus 525, Philadelphia plus 400. As for the Warriors, their updated series price is minus 400 against the Rockets, plus 320 on the comeback. And game one tonight, Nuggets hosting the Blazers. The Nuggets are minus 135 for the series. The Blazers are plus 115. I like the Blazers in the series. Not a huge amount. Get a little taste of Blazers plus 115. Also like Portland tonight in the late game. They are plus 4. They, got past OKC, making it look relatively easy. Damian Lillard, second in the NBA in postseason scoring, 33 points per game, only behind Kevin Durant at a 35.0 points per game average so far. Since March 9th, the Trailblazers are 18-4 straight up. Now, I should note Enes Kanter, who was outstanding in the previous series against OKC. He averaged 13.2 points per game and 10.2 rebounds per game. Separated his shoulder in game 5. He's listed as questionable. I just watched an interview with him off the Trailblazers Twitter page. It was after shoot around. Looks like it's going to be a game time decision. If he can't go, obviously Zach Collins and Myers Leonard will have increased minutes for Portland. It's a big deal because obviously Jokic for Denver is their star and really the only one that played particularly well, although Jamal Murray has some big-time clutch shots at crunch time. But as Charles Barkley keenly pointed out in Game 7 for the young Denver team, Paul Millsap's really the only one with any playoff experience, and B, they played with some tight sphincters outside of Jokic in Game 7, but they still held off San Antonio thanks to a good first half, but San Antonio surged back. But look, Portland's fresh. Denver's fresh off a 7-game series. Some of you say, well, Golden State only had 1 day's rest after beating the Clippers in Game 6, and they won. But the Warriors did not cover yesterday. The Rockets covered. So I like Portland tonight plus the 4. I think they'll win outright. But certainly if you get a taste of the money line, plus 150, that might be able to find a plus 160, a few plus 155s out there. If so, maybe get a taste of that, but more on Portland, certainly plus the points. Excuse my chapstick break here. When you got to do it, you got to do it. Okay, so the early game tonight, Toronto minus 6.5. I mentioned how the total down to 220 from 223 in game 1. Sixers plus 240 on the money line. I don't have a strong feel for this one. I don't know that Kawhi is going to go 16 of 23 again. And I don't know if Joel Embiid is going to go 5 of 18 from the field again. But now you may have seen on the last video, I pointed out the awful Toronto trend in game 1s where they were 1-10, but straight up in against the spread. But all except for one of those. But they did have one under Kawhi in the Orlando series last in the opening round where they lost outright. So he was a part of one of those non-covers and outright losses, but he took care of game 1 for the Raptors with that sensational performance. So we moved to game 2 tonight, and I'm just going to in-game bet it. If I in-game bet it, obviously I'm going to be following along looking for some value somewhere. But I just don't have a strong feel for it going into tonight. I mentioned I do like the Blazers tonight. The other game tomorrow, Golden State minus 5.5, total of 220. The game 1 total was 224.5, and it was a 104-100 final in favor of Golden State, so only 204 combined. So the total comes down 4.5 points to 220. Once it was, in the half hour, 45 minutes pre-tip, once it was clarified, it was pretty much known Steph was going to play and start. But once Klay Thompson was in the starting lineup, some books had gone down to maybe even 5 early yesterday. But most were at 5.5. When the news with Klay in the lineup, it went to 6 real quick. And then some books even went to 6.5. Might have even been 1 or 2 that hit 7 before tip. But Houston covers game 2 tomorrow night. I went with the Rockets yesterday. I leaned the Rockets tomorrow, but nothing to the extent that I'm bullish on those Boston Celtics. I mean, they look to have the advantage in every matchup on the court, really. And look, Malcolm Brogdon, he may be back for game 3. He's definitely out for game 2. Again, Sterling Brown, questionable. And, they're already missing Paul Gasol as well. So Boston plus 7.5 is the big play tomorrow night. Before we let you go, let me update you on the futures overall to win the NBA title at sportsbook.ag. Golden State back up to minus 60, whereas they were minus 140 for several days after they lost that game 5 at home to the Clippers. Toronto's at plus 600 or 6-1. Rockets 8-1. Milwaukee 10-1. Boston now down to 14-1. Remember last week, as I mentioned earlier, I had recommended them. I think the day I made the video, they were actually 15-1, but they eventually moved to 20-1. Right now they're 14-1. The Nuggets at 30-1. Portland 40-1. Philly is 45-1. Now let's update you on odds to win the East. Toronto plus 125 chalk. Milwaukee plus 180. Boston plus 325. Philly 18-1, and then to win the West, you got Golden State minus 300, the Rockets plus 400 or 4-1, Nuggets 12-1, and Portland 18-1. I'm Brian Edwards of MajorWager.com. This is your latest NBA video, bullish on the Celtics plus 7.5 tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.